Hello and welcome back to Scan TV's show called Caregivers First. I'm your host, Lynette Whiteman, and our show provides caregivers with information and resources for caregiving, including topics such as legal issues, health insurance, physical wellness, nutrition, and other timely topics. I am so excited. Our guest today is Mr. David Willis, who is the business writer for the Asbury Park Press. David, thank you. Welcome.
Thanks
thank
for
you
that.
So tell me about your column and your part with the Asbury Park Press.
So I write the paper's Press on Your Side consumer column, where I help regular folks with their consumer problems, whether it could be with banks, could be with the utility company, it could be a retail store, doesn't matter.
Okay.
They call and they call and they write me and ask me to try to help them solve a problem.
So out of the letters, you must get hundreds of letters, right?
I get about 20 to 25 calls and emails and letters a week.
Okay.
Roughly.
And how do you decide, oh, I need to investigate this, or this sounds something that I should look into further? Is it a hard decision for you?
Well, I'm pretty good at going through everything. I usually call everyone back once, so everyone does get a chance to talk to me to explain what the problem is.
Okay.
And then I try to figure out if I can help or not. If I can't help, then I'm probably not going to be able to really follow up about it. But my job is to write news stories. So if it's a good news story and I can see a path to taking care of something, then I'll get involved.
And do you ever go down that path, or do you find people like it's really not a legitimate complaint? They should have done their homework beforehand. Sometimes,
and sometimes that's the story. I mean, that someone didn't take the right steps.
Right.
And I usually talk about it with the person, about what they did or what they didn't do and what they could have done, and then maybe we'll decide to write a story anyway.
Mm-hmm. And you also are very involved in the scam world, the people getting scammed and seniors getting scammed. Did that evolve from the business, writing the business?
Well, from the column, I mean, I do get calls all the time from seniors and caregivers too about something's happening to my parents, or I got a phone call today, someone saying that I won $1 million, and I really want to believe it, and I unfortunately have to tell them that it's a scam, and they should just forget about it.
Right.
They didn't win. Yeah,
it's so sad though.
Right.
It's so exciting when you get those things. It's hard.
Well, people have to remember that the scammers that are calling on the phone, this is their job.
Yeah.
So they're very, very good at it,
Yeah.
and they can be very, very convincing.
Yeah. What are some of the common scams that you've been seeing recently with either the elderly people that caregivers should be aware of?
Well, I mean, some of them, they call up and they say, I'm with the IRS, you owe money, we're going to come to arrest you if you don't pay up now. That's obviously, I mean, oftentimes seniors are very trusting, especially with authority. So, and they don't want to be arrested. So, my goodness, something must be wrong if they're calling me. And there's usually a threat of arrest. And these guys can be very, very nasty, and they can start shouting at the person, cursing at them to pay now, or they're going to be in trouble.
And how do they pick the phone numbers to call? How do these people know? Or they call everybody and they just stay on the line with somebody?
I mean, they essentially, these are big operations. So really don't think of it as a guy in his home. Okay. Think of it as a bunch of people in an office building or in an office like this one, making calls. So they call up using computers that they're able to blast out thousands of numbers at once, and whoever they get. So they just, they often have information about the person that's been gathered off of, the internet. You can find out about all sorts of things about people, their names, their family members' names, through social media. I mean, there's a person making the call, and then there's a whole bunch of people behind them supporting that effort.
Wow. So it's almost like they have a business meeting and they pitch ideas.
Sort of.
Like they say, oh, this might be a good idea to get people.
Well, I mean, they're made out of call centers. So there's all people kind of doing the same kind of call, and when they get somebody, that's that could be a couple $1,000s. Right. So it pays off. So for every this isn't really an exact number, but if it's supposed to make 100 calls, if one person falls for it, that's probably a pretty good day.
And is there anything universal, like never give out your social security number? If they ask this question, it's not legitimate. Is there any universal advice you could give to people?
Sure. I mean, obviously, you never give out your social security number to anyone.
Ever. On the phone.
Ever on the phone.
If anybody asks you for
Correct.
social security
you
number,
never give that out.
Hang up.
And you hang up, and if anyone asks you for money over the telephone, or if anyone says, give us your bank account information because we're going to sign you up for a credit card. All that information stays to yourself.
Okay, so don't give it.
And if someone calls you saying that they're from the bank,
right,
and you have a problem, call them back with the number that's either on your bank statement or on the back of your credit card.
Okay.
And to make sure you're dealing with someone legitimate. No one should ever be asking you for money over the phone.
Okay.
Ever.
Right. Hard stop. Okay.
Right.
I think what I've heard, which I think is so difficult, is that these people are so smart that they start building relationships. That I'm your grandson, Grandma, don't you remember me? Or I'm in trouble, Grandma. Can you send me money? Or I even heard one where people were targeting women who were alone and lonely and trying to be their boyfriends and sending them flowers and candy and saying you're so beautiful. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, you got to understand these guys and women. I mean, because they're not only men.
Yeah.
Are professionals at this. So, for instance, there's a particular nasty call that a lot of people I've written about and other news media outlets have written about, where they called up a woman and just who was alone and just was her friend. I mean, there was no romance. It was just one of those, how you doing today?
Yeah.
What do you have for breakfast? And this person really didn't talk to many people. But over time, the conversation, by the way, you won some money. So in order to win that money, you're going to have to send me $1,000 or $2,000 or $200.
Yeah.
And that always begets something more. So
Right.
they always come back for seconds and thirds, and they're not really satisfied until they've taken every penny you have.
Right.
So in this particular case, a scammer over the course of months took about $250,000 from somebody.
Wow.
And this was a widow of a priest who had saved their money, and they were going to give it to charity, and they had some plans for that. And all the time she was thinking that she was making money.
Right.
This big payday was coming.
Right.
So the only time they found out about it was when she went to her financial planner and said, I have this all these bucks coming in. What am I going to do with it? And he called the police. And the police called the woman's daughter and said, your mom's in trouble.
Oh,
I mean,
God.
not criminal trouble, but you got some issues going on.
Oh, how sad.
Like, I get those calls from either from the seniors. They call me up, and they tell me about that someone called pretending to be their grandkid.
Right.
And what I always tell people is just stop. I mean, one of the things that scammers do is they try to get you to react immediately without thinking. So if your grandkid calls and says, well, I've been in a car accident, and those are very elaborate calls. I mean, the lawyer will come on the phone, and someone else will come on the phone, and the voice will sound sort of right, and they might have sort of details about things. Say, you know what? I'm sorry you're in jail.
Right.
We'll get to you in a second. I'm going to hang up and I'm going to call your dad up. Oh, don't call dad.
Right.
Well, I'm going to have to call dad.
Yeah.
So you call the kid up. You call somebody up.
Right.
And most likely the person's either at work or sitting next door. I mean, these kind of scammers can happen with grandkids. They can happen with bosses and employees. All sorts of things. And it's all about getting you to respond immediately without thinking.
Right. So as a caregiver, if you're not living close to your parent or is there something that there's advice to be aware of, or because I imagine that person is embarrassed that they're doing this. So they're not going to tell you, I made a new friend and I sent her $200. Right. So what can a caregiver do if they don't live close?
I think a couple things they can do. So first of all, talk about it.
Yeah.
Kind of, if I mean, I talk about it with my dad. He's got his, he's all together, but he's 83, and I've talked to him over the years about callers and how to handle somebody who comes on the phone, whether it be someone who is calling to switch your energy provider. Just hang up the phone and get the information. But what they can do is just talk about with their loved ones, and say, hey, the scam's going on about the IRS, and the IRS doesn't call and demand money over the phone. You shouldn't give money over the phone or give your personal information over the telephone. And then also, and just kind of see how things go with that, because maybe some things might pop up, especially if you have an okay relationship with your parent or whoever, and say that it really is okay if they got scammed. I mean, it's not okay. They're in financial trouble, and there's going to be issues to deal with. But this is not something that they should be ashamed about, because scammers are very good. Smart people get scammed all the time.
Are they mostly, my impression is that they're in Jamaica or not in the United States.
Mostly overseas. Yeah, the FBI and other international police busted a big IRS scam building in India a couple, like 18 months or so ago. So it is overseas, so it makes it hard to catch them.
And what's the likelihood? Okay, so you send the $200 or the $1,000, and then you tell somebody. The chances of you getting that money back once it's gone
your money is gone.
That's it.
So you give money to a scammer, your money's gone.
Wow, you're not getting it back.
You're not getting it back. So, I mean, oftentimes what they'll do, I mean, some of the things don't really make much sense. So the scammer calls you up and they say, well, and you offer to send them a check. No, we don't want a check. We either want a money order, so you have to go to Walmart and send a money order, and now there's a lot of warnings about that. Or go to Walgreens or some drugstore or another store and buy iTunes gift cards and send them over. Or buy prepaid debit cards. And they have all sorts of reasons for that.
That makes sense at the time.
And because, well, I mean, one senior got hit with a grandparent scam I talked to. She's together. Yeah. Pretty together. But she just had a bad day. I mean, she's dealing with her husband who's having issues. And, she got caught up. Wow. And she didn't catch on until they'd come back 3 times. And she lost about, I think it was $14,000 doing this. Wow. It didn't break her. But so she was able to say, she was kind of like, darn, I got scammed. But, she went to the police.
It's so sad. It's so sad.
It's very sad.
When you hear these stories.
It's very sad.
Yeah.
So besides talking to parents or talking to your people, you can also just kind of watch when you're over. Oftentimes scammers beget scammers.
Okay, hold that thought for 1 second, because that's a great way to come back to. So we're going to take a short break, and we will be back in a minute with David Willis, the business writer for the Asbury Park Press.
You probably already know that rehabilitation is a must for successful recovery from surgery, injury, or serious illness. What you may not know is that you're free to choose where you go for rehab. In Monmouth and Ocean County, the compelling choice is CareOne. Where you choose to go for rehab matters, and with CareOne, you have 4 convenient locations to choose from in Monmouth and Ocean counties. CareOne at Jackson, CareOne at Wall, CareOne at Homedale, and CareOne at King James in the Atlantic Highlands. At CareOne, you'll work with a team of experts to develop a plan based on your needs and goals. You'll have the full support of caring, compassionate physicians, RNs, licensed therapists, and nutritionists dedicated to helping you recover successfully, without setbacks, at a pace that makes you comfortable and successful in meeting your rehabilitation goals. Once you take the first step with us, you'll never look back. Call 877-99-CARE-1 today and come for a tour.
Welcome back to Caregivers First. I'm your host, Lynette Whiteman, and I am thrilled to be joined today by David Willis, who is the business writer for the Asbury Park Press. And David, right before the break, you mentioned scammers beget scammers,
right.
And I never heard that. Can you explain that?
So when someone gets scammed,
right,
they get put on what's actually called a suckers list. And their information is sold by other scammers. And so you might start getting more calls. So if you fall for a scam, or if your loved one falls for a scam, they're going to get more phone calls.
Wow.
And they're going to get more letters in the mail.
Wow.
And they will literally be flooded with scam mail.
Wow. How big, how do you know how much do these people make from?
I have no idea.
Yeah,
but I mean, the IRS scam has netted several $1 million.
Wow.
For scammers in New Jersey. I haven't looked at the stats recently, but it's millions of dollars.
Wow.
So it does work, and as I said, it's why they do it.
Right. Yeah.
Much like when you buy something with a catalog, all of a sudden you get a lot of catalogs. Right. It's the same, really, the same sort of thing.
Wow.
Same sort of thing. So that's for what caregivers can do. They can look and see. Look at the mail. If they're getting a lot of sweepstakes mail, a lot of you've won $1,000, or you've entered some foreign lottery, and you've won, that could be a sign that there's some problems. And what often those scams do is they say just send $20 and you'll get your money. So people are sending $20 bills out to things.
To get that. And what about if you live in, I know a lot of people live in adult communities, kids maybe visit once a year from Christmas. Is there a way that neighbors could look out for neighbors? Is there some way, if that person's getting a lot of mail, or is there any way you could look out for a neighbor?
I think it's just really a question of checking in on people.
Yeah.
Just being neighborly and just talking to, talking to friends, talking about these scams.
Right.
I mean, I've gone to senior communities across Monmouth and Ocean counties, and I've talked about these scams with small groups and large groups.
Right.
So it's a matter of talking about it and making sure people are aware.
Yeah. Is there, I don't know if you know this, but are men more likely or women more likely to fall for scams? Is there any information about that?
I don't have that. But I have talked to a lot of people, and it's been both.
Okay.
I mean, it's not just women calling me.
Right.
It's men calling me. And oftentimes, if for instance, the grandparent scam, there'll be a husband there, and the wife will answer the phone, and the wife will be very upset about it, about how their loved one has been arrested. So rather than stop it, the husband might go along just to kind of calm the wife down. And just kind of make sure that they're okay.
Right.
What they should always be doing is kind of looking out for each other and stopping it and saying, hey, listen, we gotta stop.
Right. And what about? I think I've also heard that, when the Police Benevolent Association or a firemen's or whatever, they never call for donations. It's always a letter. Is that true?
It depends. I mean, most PBAs don't call, and fire departments don't call, but others hire marketers.
Okay.
So when you get a call from the PBA saying, "Have you donated?" Usually it's from a marketer. And the problem with those phone calls is that a lot of times the money doesn't actually get to the PBA.
Okay.
So a lot of it, 90% of it, all of it, could be taken by the marketer to help, for whatever purposes. So what I tell people to do is just go call the police department up.
Okay.
The non-emergency line of the police department, and say, hey, what's the number for the Explorers group, or how do I donate to the PBA? Okay. Those guys will be ready for the call.
Okay.
They'll know about it. And if you want to donate to the fire department, I live in Red Bank. There are guys on Shrewsbury Avenue out with boots, on a weekend. Donate then.
Okay, and that's more legitimate.
Yeah, and plus you know what you're giving it to.
Right.
And I'm always a big fan of never donating over the telephone.
Okay, so that's just a rule.
So just a rule.
Right.
Don't give money over the phone.
Over the phone.
And it just there's just too many possibilities.
Okay. I think that one of the things that people aren't aware of, because in my line of work, we work with Alzheimer's people a lot, and how with Alzheimer's disease, the judgment is one of the first things that goes in this illness, along with short-term memory and things like that. So I think probably the advice to tell somebody with Alzheimer's is don't answer the phone. Just let it go to the machine. Let's say you're living with a spouse and the spouse has to go out. Do you get calls from people like who their family member had Alzheimer's disease and they fell for something, or they're more vulnerable?
No. Well, I mean, I have gotten calls from people who have parents with real memory issues.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's Alzheimer's, but they're obviously having real problems, and they don't. They're very embarrassed about falling for the scam.
Yeah.
So I've actually interviewed seniors who are doing this, and they haven't had any money in their lives, and they have a whole bunch of kids.
Yeah.
And they haven't been able to leave anything for their children. So these callers represent an opportunity for them, though they think that it does, to leave something for their kids. So they have lists of who this money will go to and who that'll go to.
Yeah.
And there's one woman I talked to, even when I told her it was a scam, and her granddaughter, who actually had to take over her finances. They had to shut her mail. They had to change the phone number. They had to deal with the bank accounts. I mean, a lot of it requires power of attorney issues that people have to deal with. But said, if I didn't believe it was real, then I would have to admit that I was scammed.
Right.
And that is very hard for some people,
right.
Especially I think if they're having a memory problem.
Right. That's a great point. Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah, that's tough. So what advice do you give? Because I know in your column you get consumer questions a lot. Is there some sort of advice that you give to be a smart consumer, to be a smarter consumer?
Sure.
What's your advice to people?
Know your business. Is my advice to people. So read your bank statements all the time.
Nobody does that.
You're going to read your bank statements all the time.
Okay.
And if you're somewhat nervous about online, have a family member help you figure out how to do it online if you can. That'll often be a sign that you might have a problem. You might be able to catch things soon. Check your cable bills. Read them.
There's such weird stuff on them, though.
Well, you should know what you're paying for, essentially, what services, so that you make sure that that you wouldn't sign up for HBO without knowing it.
Okay, because that will pop up.
That could pop up on your bill, sure.
Okay.
And I've had people call me up and they say, "I've been charged for HBO for 5 months. I didn't know about it." I'm like, "Well, you didn't look at your bill. It's on there.
Okay.
Look at your electric bill. Look at your utility bills."
And you do this?
I do this.
Okay.
I mean, most of the time I do it. I admit I can be, sometimes I might not follow my own advice, but I do check my bank account every day.
Your bank account?
Yes. So I know what's coming in and coming out of my bank account all the time.
Okay.
I have alerts set up so that if something happens, like suppose I go below a certain amount of money, which I never would.
Right.
That I will get an alert.
So basically, you can't go to sleep on stuff. You can't just trust that things are going to be okay.
Because there's opportunities. There's people have been hacked. Your credit information, the Equifax hack affects everybody. It affects about I think it was 246 million people, or 146 million people. A lot of people. The numbers out of my head, but that means that your information is out there.
Right.
Your social security number is out there.
Right.
It's for sale.
Right.
Along with your name and your birth date. So that's your core being.
Right. Right.
So you need to know what's happening.
Right. And what about like when you're going to buy a washing machine or a dryer or just consumer products?
Keep receipts. Keep your receipts.
Okay. All right.
Keep copies of the receipt. Keep copies of your warranty.
Okay.
Keep copies of your extended warranty that you have it, and read it.
Okay.
I mean, you got to read all those fine print details. People call me up sometimes and they say, "Well, For instance, they wanted to cancel. Here's a good one. People buy a service contract for their natural gas appliances.
Right.
But they want to cancel it. You can't cancel it.
Okay.
It renews. So if it renews and they said you got 6 months left, you're still paying the 6 months.
Wow.
And it's in there. I can't fix
I am
that.
guilty of everything. I don't look at anything. What's the biggest joy you had, like that somebody wrote to you or you heard about something that you helped them with? Is there
yeah, I mean, kind of what we're doing here with
Yeah.
caregivers. So a family member called me up and said that the mother was I guess comatose, mostly comatose, but living at home. And wanted to stay at home, didn't want to go anywhere else, was being cared for by a caregiver. But the mother had signed a reverse mortgage. And the thing with the reverse mortgages is you have to actually live in the house, which she did. But you have to come to the door every day. Once a year, come to the door and sign a piece of paper. And her mother couldn't sign the paper because she was upstairs, comatose or close to it. And so I helped get the mortgage company because they were going to make her leave.
Wow.
So I got the mortgage company to listen to the caregivers, the daughters. The problem with that case was that the mother had never signed a power of attorney. So the mortgage company, by rights, couldn't talk to her.
Right.
But I kind of got them to just,
come on, guys.
Come on, guys.
Yeah.
And they dealt with it, and they were able to get what they needed legally to do that. And the woman passed later, but she was able to do it in her home, which that made me feel kind of good.
Yeah. So you're really a helper for people.
Yeah. So I do different things.
Yeah. So David's information is going to be up on the screen, and David is available to do talks for different groups and senior villages. Do you want to just give out your...
Sure. I'll give you my phone number is 732-643-4042.
Okay.
And my email is dwillis, DWILLIS, @GannettNJ.com. So it's GANNETTNJ.com.
Wonderful. So please contact David. And if you have any topics that you want covered on this show, or a question or some feedback for us, please call us at 732-542-1326, or you could email me at LynetteW@caregivervolunteers.org. So again, thank you so much, David,
Thanks,
for being
Lynette.
here. You gave out incredible information. I am guilty of everything.
Check your bank statement
I will
today.
check my bank. I'm going home and checking my bank statement. But thank you again. You are such a help to our community.
Great.
So it was wonderful to have you
Thanks
here.
very much.
Thank you.